I am on a quest to play every Nintendo 64 game ever. Get ready for the fight of your life, because today we're looking at the 1997 fighting game, Dark Rift. Dark Rift. That name alone sounds edgy. Dark Rift is a fighting game for the N64 and eventually PC. Have you ever wanted 2 copies of Dark Rift for the N64? I never did, but here we are. I quickly bought this one off eBay because I saw a really good deal, and then I really read the description after buying it, and it said it was Japanese only. So I immediately canceled that order, but they still sent it, and then they deleted their eBay account after that. What the fuck? During the time I thought I would get a refund, I ordered a second copy. And it was a great deal because I also got Wheel of Fortune with it.
Let's go!
When the games arrived, I learned that the one that I thought was Japanese only wasn't actually. And it worked on my N64. And the one that came with Wheel of Fortune crashed at the options menu. Constantly. But don't you worry, Wheel of Fortune works just fine. Before diving into this review, I could tell you all the truth, that I'm just not great at traditional fighting games because I grew up solely on Smash Bros. And Soul Calibur. But instead I'm going to lie and blame my poor playing on a battle wound I got at work where I cut my thumb open with scissors. I'm not sure what was up with the fighting games in the 90s, but they were being cranked out as fast as Marvel movies are today. Everyone was making a fighting game. Dark Rift is a sequel to the mediocre fighting game Criticom, and it was one of those 90s fighting games. You know what I'm talking about. Was Dark Rift better than all the other fighting games coming out at the time? Well, considering that most gamers probably never heard of Dark Rift or even Criticom, says a lot. And the developers, Chronos Digital, are out of business. So yeah, Dark Rift fell into the 90s fighting game abyss. But just because it's forgotten doesn't mean it's bad. When reviewing a traditional fighting game, I believe there are 6 main things that need to be reviewed. The plot, the characters, the stages, the control, the balance, and of course, music. I like to call this the traditional fighting game PCSCBM test, which is also known as the TFGPCSCBM test. So let's talk about the game. Dark Rift is all about fighters from 3 dimensions: the light dimension, the dark dimension, and the neutral dimension, which is where Earth is located. Ultimately, these fighters who are our playable characters are hunting down the Master Key, which requires 3 crystals or something. It's really convoluted and the writing is so wordy that I feel like I'm reading a pretentious college essay that's trying to hit a word count. As the orb rapidly expands, the planet's surface begins to crumble in weak defense. Unable to endure the strain, the planet explodes into billions of fragmented pieces. Morphix becomes a star and the planet explodes. Oh yeah. Every snippet of plot is worded so fancily. There are so many unnecessary adjectives and verbs that no one would actually say in a conversation. Trust me, I'm an English major, and I will flaunt my degree wherever I can because I can't use it anywhere else. I used to write like this in college, but I learned it's not good. The overall story's fine, it's just convoluted and messy. I mean, I've dealt with worse. The writing's just too wordy and whatever. It's fine. It doesn't get a passing grade from me. The cream of the crop in every fighting game has to be the characters. They are the models that you fight with. They dictate your moves, your playstyle. They are imperative to fighting games. And I gotta say, Dark Rift's cast kinda fucking rocks. This cast includes an array of characters from the 3 realms. Colonel Aaron Maverick, a cyborg military hothead. Morphix, who is my personal favorite because they look like Dark Samus. Nikki, your stereotypical sexualized fighter who moans with every hit. Oh, that's so 90s. Gender bend Darth Vader Eve. Gore, who's your average heavy fighter, he's pretty lame. Scarlet, a badass warrior woman. The mysterious samurai, Zenmuron? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm an English major, not a speaking major. The final boss and main antagonist, Demitron. Demitron's tragic assistant, Demonica. And Sonork, another antagonist who's also a cyborg. He's pretty heckin' cool. I am legitimately a huge fan of this cast. Each character has very memorable designs and pretty neat, passable backstories. As long as you have a dictionary to decipher their plot summaries, you'll enjoy them enough. I put around 9 or 10 hours into this game total, and this cast will stick with me longer than most fighting games casts that I put the same amount of time into, if not more. These characters are great, specifically Morphix and Demonica. Morphix is super interesting and unique because they're essentially the manifestation of light. And Demonica has an incredibly tragic backstory that really pulled me in and made me actually care about the plot. I will never forget these two, they're wonderful. And I definitely won't forget Nikki because it's kind of f***ed up that they gave the sexy female role to a 16-year-old. I feel illegal just listening to her moans and groans. While the characters are excellent, their stages are pretty bland. They pale in comparison to the characters. They're cool to look at for a minute, but they don't do much for me personally. A lot of them are just dark stages, and I had to turn on a light in my room because it felt too dark. I guess I should have expected that in a game called Dark Rift. Dark Rift is a 90s fighting game for sure. The advertisement for this game lists its qualities: blazing frame rates and some very unpleasant surprises. Yeah, I don't know why they listed frame rate twice on here. The game's selling point was 60 frames per second. I'm convinced it's a different kind of 60 frames per second than the one we're used to today. I believe they meant like 60 frames in each animation or something, I don't really know. I can't find a reason why they advertise 60 FPS on a console that can't run 60 FPS. I know it was released for PC a few months later, and that could probably run 60 FPS back then, but why not have two different marketing campaigns, and why lie to the N64 consumers?
Here we are on a 4K TV, and this is not 60 FPS at all? This is probably a solid 24.
Beyond the frames, the game, like many N64 games, is very clunky. Clunky has become my new favorite adjective in all these N64 reviews. The word just really defines the N64 era. The inputs are off a little, the movement's a little wonky, not a fan of that. Jumping is weird, but jumping is weird to me in every non-platform fighting game.
It's slow. It's old. It's what I haven't done in a long time. Dated.
Holy guacamole, doggone it. This game is as balanced as my grandmother, a 90-year-old with vertigo. There are some absolutely busted fighters in this game. Demonica and Eve are disgusting. They are downright unfair. Play with a friend and pick one of these two and watch your friendship crumble faster than an Oreo. And on the flip side, there are some really bad eggs in this carton of characters. Gore specifically. I have never seen such a garbage fighting character in my life. Holy moly! The rest of the cast is pretty mid. Demitron's pretty stupid, Nikki has an ungodly annoying attack that you can't get out of, or at least I couldn't get out of, and Morphix is just insane once you learn how to use them, but definitely takes a lot of skill to learn. And because this game is so incredibly unbalanced, it's very frustrating to play single player. In single player, you're in a tournament, and as the tournament progresses, the computer gets smarter. So if you're fighting someone like Demonica or Eve in the final few rounds, it's infuriating. Whereas if you're fighting someone like Gore, it'd be a cakewalk. The balance in this game is just flat out bad game design. Sure, the controls are slow, the plot is wordy, most stages are bland, but none of those flaws hold a candle to this unbalanced disaster. Hopefully the music makes up for it. Nope. There's Sega Genesis music. Then there's Game Boy Advance music, and underneath it all is the Dark Rift soundtrack. This soundtrack is bad. Oh, it's so bad. It sounds like the composer just threw a bunch of irrelevant noises that don't even work together and called it a song. There are some good songs, but they're few and far between, and by some I mean like 1 or 2, maybe 1.5. Bad music, just bad music all around. Big fat do not recommend. Does Dark Rift pass the TFGPC SCBM test? Nope. While the characters are excellent and memorable, everything else is the literal opposite. Dark Rift is an unbalanced mess that's dated to all hell. It may not have been so terrible back in the N64 era, which is why if I were a reviewer in 1997, I would give this game a generous 3.3 out of 10, a modest effort to create something worthwhile that has sporadic greats but consistent bores. As for a modern day score, 1.9 out of 10. This 90s fighting game falls into the rubbish pile along with all the other mediocre fighters that were pumped out back then. Do not buy Dark Rift, it's not worth owning. Trust me, I own 2 copies. I feel like this review is on the shorter side. There really isn't that much to talk about in fighting games. I mean, I could gush more about the characters, because I feel like this review was pretty negative, but why listen to me gush about characters when you could be off doing something else, like playing Metroid Prime 3?